Hey.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
So we're trying to work out really the idea of the Holy Trinity,
Right.
and what exactly are the distinct aspects of it, and what do they each bring, if that makes sense.
Okay, are you Christian?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am, my friend.
And I take it you've come here and have you been challenged on the Trinity at all?
No, I think I was trying to. We were having a discussion. My friend's Muslim.
Okay.
We were having a discussion. I don't think I'm very good. I couldn't
Sure.
quite distinguish the three things.
Yeah.
And to explain it to her very well.
I will do my best to explain it as best as I can. So basically, what we believe is that when we talk about what God is, we say God is one because he's one in his essence. When we talk about who God is, we say God is three because he is he's three in his persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Now, lots of people initially they don't get that idea. It's like, how can three be one and one be three? But actually, there is, I can demonstrate to you that three can be one in one way and one in another way, and you'll see it straight away the moment I point it out to you. So, in your mind's eye, imagine an underground water reservoir, right? In a mountain, up a mountain. It's a huge amount of water inside this mountain. And then on one side of the mountain, it breaks out and forms a river going down one way, and on the other side of the mountain, it breaks out and goes down the river the other way. You can identify the river, River 1, you can identify the source of the river, and you can identify River 2. In one way, they're three, 1, 2, 3. In another way, they're one because it's one water from one source.
Right.
Yeah. So this is in very summary form our understanding of the Trinity. Another example is three-dimensional space. You've got the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. You're standing in three-dimensional space. You experience three-dimensional space, but you can distinguish between each of these axes. And if you rotate these axes so that the x-axis now looks like the y-axis, it's still an XYZ axis. They're performing the same properties, but they're still distinguishable.
Right. So are the two other aspects, so the Holy Spirit and Jesus, are they understood to be attributes of one God, or are they three distinct
Yeah.
three distinct types of God?
Right. So,
or are two of them attributes of one God?
firstly, thank you for your question. Yeah. What we would say is that each one of the persons. So, firstly, they're not attributes. So,
They're not attributes.
not attributes. So you can chuck that away, right? Then
So they're not features of God.
they're not features of God. No.
Right.
So each of the persons is fully possesses what it is to be God. In the same way that you and me all fully possess what it is to be human,
Right.
right? And our possession of what it is to be human does not take away from our distinctive humanness, but nor does it mean that one of us or two of us or all three of us aren't human, right? So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit have distinctives that mean that the Father is not the Son is not the Holy Spirit is not the Father. But they still fully possess that thing that is God. Now, the difference between my analogy of us three and God is that we are not in a unique species, we're not in a unique genus, right? God is in a unique species of which the exemplar of God is one. There is not another God,
Right.
right? Whereas there are lots of different ways of being human.
Right.
You know, like, and there's clearly distinctives in the sense of our humanity, and I mean, you can argue from an evolutionary point of view that there are other types of humans. So, like our species, there are more than one exemplar of, but in the species of divinity, there is only one. The Father possesses that fully and completely, the Son possesses that fully and completely, and the Holy Spirit possesses that fully and completely. So my analogy does break down a bit. It's not a perfect analogy because God is unique.
Right. So this is the understanding. That's what I think I was trying to understand.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you understand it like this as well, but the Christian understanding of God is that it is unique to anything else, and in that uniqueness there are three different forms of God. Would that
So
be?
I will stick like some neurotic, obsessive, compulsive bloke to the word person. And the reason why I do that is not because I'm trying to be awkward. because I'm really not. I know you're genuinely engaging and you're trying to get it. But the church in the 4th century gave us a way to describe the Trinity, to guide us away from error and misunderstanding.
Right.
And it counsels us that when we speak of the hypostasis, when we speak of the person, we say hypostasis. And that is to protect us from falling into an error of saying that somehow one being is pretending to be another being by changing a mask. Because we're not saying that. We're not saying that like the Father becomes the Son and then becomes the Holy Spirit. We're saying that the Father is a distinct person from the Son and a distinct person from the Holy Spirit. But these 3 persons fully and completely possess the singularity and the singular uniqueness of divinity. And there is only one divinity that they can possess. So they possess it completely at the same time.
Right, so there is not one that is kind of more powerful than the others. They are 3 equal,
Yes.
powerful persons.
Yes, right.
And there is not one of them that submits their will to the other one, or they
And the thing is, so I feel I might know what you're sort of pointing towards, because in the New Testament there's lots of statements where Jesus says, I pray to the Father,
Yeah.
I do the Father's will, and he speaks like this a lot. But the thing is, in the book of Philippians, chapter 2, reading from about verse 15, I think it's 15, it says that Christ, in fact, I'll show you the verse if you want it. Christ, being in the form of God, did not grasp at equality with God, but humbled himself and took on the form of a servant. And I think that trips people up, because when Christians say that there's not an inequality, that there's not one submits to the other, you read the New Testament and you go, hold on a minute, Jesus is doing exactly that. But the reason why Jesus is doing that is because he has taken the form of a servant in his earthly life. And so in his earthly life, as a perfect human being, he's not going to be an atheist, because let's be honest, they don't represent the best of humanity. He takes on the form of a servant, and that means that he relates to his Father like a human being.
in the physical form.
In the physical form, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not in the physical form, because the physical form of the person we know is Jesus.
Yeah, the physical, right. So the incarnation, let me give you I love picture and metaphors, because I know a lot of people think visually. So I want to give you a picture metaphor that kind of describes the incarnation. But like with all metaphors, it's not perfect. Imagine in your mind, I give you a gold coin, right? The gold coin obviously has two faces. The image on one face is different from the image on the other face, so they look different. When you look at one face, it looks different to the other face. But the gold that presents the first face and the second face to you runs all the way through the coin. The personhood of Christ is represented by the gold. The human nature of Christ is represented by one face. The divinity of Christ is represented by another face. So, why does this analogy apply to Christ? So, Christ sleeps, Christ eats, Christ goes to the toilet, Christ dies. How does God sleep? He doesn't get tired. How does God eat? He doesn't get hungry. How does God die? He's immortal, right? If I take that gold coin that you've imagined in your mind and I get a sharp implement and I scratch the heck out of one face of the coin, that face is utterly deformed and the gold is affected by the deformity. But the other face remains totally untarnished, totally perfect.
Right.
What happens to Christ's humanity is like me scratching one side of a coin. It does affect the person of Christ, but his divinity, totally untouched.
Right. So the physical person.
Yes, is the one that goes to the toilet, is the one that falls asleep, is the one that dies on the cross. But the divinity never gets tired, never gets hungry, and never dies.
So is there a
You follow that
person-
analogy?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one, eh? It's a good one, eh? It's a good one.
So is the
I worked on that.
is the person of Christ Before Jesus Christ came into the physical form of the person, what was that part? What is that part of the divinity referred to?
Can I just say, I really love your questions because they sound sincere and they're honest.
No, they really don't.
I know. No, I mean it.
Yeah.
Like, this is lovely. This is exactly why I come to the park, to talk to people like you. I don't often get it, so whenever I do, I sort of relish the joy of it, right? So the reality is that before Christ takes to himself a human nature, he exists eternally as a divine person,
Okay.
without a
Is there
beginning.
a name for that?
Yeah, we call it the Logos,
The Logos.
or we call it the Angel of the Lord.
Okay. And is that in the New Testament or the Old Testament?
So these are Old Testament references. We call it the wisdom of God. These are names for Christ before his incarnation. He's only called Jesus Christ at his incarnation. And the angel Gabriel says, you will call him Jesus, because he will save his people.
And Gabriel is addressing.
And Gabriel is an angel. Is addressing Mary.
Mary.
Right? So the divine Logos, the wisdom of the Lord, the angel of the Lord, who eternally exists, is God, right? Takes to himself a humanity, and that humanity, that divine God-man, is called Jesus Christ. We now know him as Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so we do apply the title Jesus to the divine Logos before, just because, logically we're seeing it as a continuum of the same person.
Right.
But technically speaking, he was known by other names before the incarnation.
Physical incarnation.
Yeah. Yeah. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, I was never going to get there.
Right.
Sorry.
I mean, the thing is,
Because I really wanted to understand this kind of
Yeah.
concept from, I guess,
the thing is, as Christians, we are utterly committed to monotheism. So we're counselled as Christians that we must never, ever say something that implies, suggests, or states that God is not one. And those that do err, and those that remain stubborn in their erring, are called heretics. And they anathematized out of the faith. But at the same time, we can't say anything that denies the plurality of the persons. So we can't confuse the persons. We can't say the Father is the Son or the Son is the Father. And if we do that, again, that's erring. And if we're stubborn in our erring, we're then anathematized.
Right.
So by default, if someone says, I believe in three gods, they're not a Christian. By default, if someone says, I believe that the Son became the Father, they're not Christian. Yeah?
Right.
Now, what's your name, sorry?
Juanita.
Sorry?
Juanita.
Juanita. My name is Bob. And
Nice
yours?
to meet you, Bob.
Tia.
Tia. Great. Is this your first time in the park?
Yeah, it's the first time.
Right. Hopefully you're having a wonderful time.
It's been very interesting.
I will warn...
There's been lots of men talking. I haven't seen any women talking.
Well, the thing about the park is that a lot of the men here get aggressive.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There are fights that happen nearly every week.
Okay.
There's a lot of intimidation. And I absolutely promise you, if some of the Muslim men knew that you were a Muslim talking to me, they would interrupt this conversation. It's only because they're not seeing and not recognising that you're a Muslim that we're not being interrupted.
Has that happened before?
Oh, loads of times, and we have it on camera, on Soko films. Right? So now may I politely ask you a question as a Muslim? Right? So, as a Muslim, you obviously, I don't know what your personal beliefs are, but Islam states that the Quran is a perfect book without any errors, without any contradictions. It's a perfect book. Everything it states is true. Right? Now, when I read the Quran and how the Quran describes what I believe as a Christian, I spot that the Quran is stating things that are actually wrong.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. Okay? So the Quran says, say not three, for Allah is one God. So that implies that we Christians believe in three gods when we don't. It says, they do err who say that Allah has become Christ, which is wrong because we don't say that the Father becomes the Son. And it says that when Allah is speaking to Jesus, he says, did I tell you to tell people to take me and my mother as gods? His mother being Mary. And no Christian takes Mary as a god.
No, but Catholics do worship Mary.
They worship her, but they don't take her as a god. And the Quran clearly states, did I tell you to take me and my mother as a god beside Allah? And Catholics don't do that.
Is that referring to worshipping someone as if they are God?
Well, it's saying that Allah is saying to Jesus, did I tell you to tell the people to take you, Jesus, and your mother, Mary, as gods beside Allah. And obviously Jesus says, no, I would never do that, right? Obviously this is the message version of the Quran. It's like my restatement of it. But the reality is, if we can identify that the Quran is objectively saying something that's wrong about what Christians believe, bearing in mind that Christians had well published what they believe about the Trinity for centuries before Islam started, right? Like the Council of Nicaea in 325, the Council of Constantinople in 381 AD. Islam arrives in the 7th century, so that's 300 years later, right? To me, this should draw out a question to an honest person that if the Quran's got such a blundering error in it, how can it be from God? And I just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I haven't read that. I do speak Arabic.
Yeah.
I can read it a little bit, but I haven't read what you just said.
Would you like me to show you?
Okay.
Yeah. No. I don't, if you want me to, I don't want to impose anything on you.
I think my question's been answered about the Trinity.
Sure. Fair enough.
Is there any question that you wanted to ask here that we were talking about earlier?
I wanted to ask, so you said that in the Old Testament that Jesus, the wisdom of God,
It's called the wisdom of God.
is called the wisdom of God.
It's called the angel of the Lord. Angel just means messenger.
Yeah, no. I think I've answered my question in my head already then.
Right,
So
fair
I was just like, where was he in the Old Testament? And I was like, oh, there. I remember
Yeah.
he says there.
Moses,
Yeah.
Jacob,
Yeah.
all the prophets. Do you have any other questions you'd like to ask? Because I'm really enjoying this, and I don't really get.
That was the one I think.
Are there any other questions that you struggled with that you want to chuck my way?
Really good.
You asked me about the Holy Spirit in the Old Testament, and then there was something else that really struggled.
If it comes back, we'll find you.
Right, so I
So
can.
I've spoken to Jewish people about the concept of the Trinity,
Yes.
and what are their thoughts on it?
So obviously, Jews.
I'm asking you to
Yeah.
on what Jews
So
believe.
I'll tell you exactly what Jews tell me. They don't believe in the Trinity,
Right.
and they don't believe that the Old Testament shows the Trinity.
Right.
The problem is, right, Jews of today are interpreting the Torah through a 5th century document called the Talmud, right? But the New Testament is a Jewish document written in the 1st century. It was written by Jews, it was written for Jews.
The New Testament.
Yes, it's a Jewish document. It was written by Jews, for Jews.
Do the Jewish people believe that?
No, but the first Jews that were Christians do.
Right.
And this is the thing, lots of people don't realise that, but when they realise it, a light bulb goes on in your head. Because if the New Testament is a Jewish document written by Jews,
Paul Jewish?
yes, Paul was Jewish, written by Jews for Jews, then that means that our concept of the Trinity is a 1st century Jewish concept.
Right.
And what happened is that because Christianity came to dominate, because the thing is about Christianity is, if you'll allow me to take a back step, right, is that the Old Testament refers to an old covenant that was made just with the people of Israel. Right? So anyone who was not a Jew was excluded. But the New Testament are the documents of a new covenant. And in that new covenant, the promises of Israel are then offered to everyone who's not Jewish. Right? And that means that obviously certain peculiar things that are specifically about being Jewish are no longer applicable.
Right.
They're superseded. Right? And now suddenly us Gentiles, because we're 3 Gentiles here, right? We Gentiles can now sit upon the promises of Abraham, sit upon the promises of David, and receive the promises of God that he has given to Israel are now offered to the world, and we can all accept it.
Right. If you think you asked Jesus what religion he followed, what do you think Jesus would say?
He would definitely say I was Jewish.
Okay. So Jesus is Jewish.
Yep.
He would see himself as Jewish. So why do Christians not see themselves as Jewish?
Right. So the reason why Jesus would say he was Jewish is because he was born into the old covenant, right? But he introduces a new covenant,
Right.
right? So he's like the hinge person in history. He literally is the linking point between the old and the new. Him and the last person in the last prophet of the old covenant was John the Baptist. The person that links the old covenant that ended with John the Baptist to a new covenant is Jesus Christ. So there are some things that Jesus says and does that are sitting in the old covenant, And then there are some things that Jesus says and does that are establishing the new covenant, because he's that hinge person in history that connects one to the other. And so Jesus would definitely call himself a Jew. But the thing is, the first Christians never called themselves Christians. They actually called themselves followers of the way, right? And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one goeth to the Father but through me. And the first Christians all just said, we're followers of the way, we're followers of the way. Christian was actually given as an insult. It was used by Roman pagans to insult Christians. It literally means little Christ. It's meant to mock Christians. And Christians took that insult on as a title for themselves in much the same way that Afro-Americans took the N-word on as a way of saying, you threw this out as an insult, but now we're going to own it. Because by taking possession of the insult, you take away its power. And that's what the first Christians did. They took the insult. It's the same with the Enlightenment thinkers. You know, when the Enlightenment emerged in Europe in the 17th century, it was actually mocked. You're the enlightened. It was a way of insulting these philosophers. And then what the philosophers went is, yeah, we are the enlightened. So they took the title on as referring to themselves.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
That's all from me, I think.
Brilliant. Any
Thank
questions
you
from
very
you?
much. No, I'm good.
Can I give you a gift?
I've got a Bible.
You've got a Bible.
Yeah.
Can I give you a different gift then? Give you a different gift.
Okay.
Yeah?
I don't have any place to put it, so you can put it in your bag.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
It's a heavy bag that you're carrying around.
So you sound like you're massively universitally educated. Are you like in the NHS or something?
Yeah,
Or
we're both doctors, yeah.
yeah. You know, why I could tell. You give off doctor-like vibes.
Not the doctor like that.
It's someone who has the ability to listen, right? That's the first thing that gives you away, is that you can listen, and it's someone who can follow a discussion. Yeah, right. And so yeah, you both gave off doctor vibes. Personally, I think I get brownie points for guessing that, despite the fact that you did not tell me.
Thank you.
Right, and you feel free to come back and talk to me anytime you like. Ditto to you as well.
Thank you. That is
All right,
really,
sister?
really helpful.
Yeah, are you a Christian?
Yeah.
Yeah, peace be with you. Hey, it was really lovely to meet you.
Nice
God
to
bless
meet
you.
God bless you too.
And I'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah.